Hello, everyone. So happy to be connected back again for yet another Tune In Tuesday. Again, we're going to be talking about law based on the request from all of you. So, this is the second session of Ignorance of Law is Not an Excuse. We did another session earlier on the last Tuesday. In case you have missed it out, the live recording is available on Facebook and it will also come up on the YouTube page of Project Nyan. So please go ahead and watch it in whichever place you are comfortable with. We're going to wait for another couple of minutes for some more friends to join in, and then we will start off with the session. In case you have any further questions from the last session, or probably you didn't put it up in the stories, feel free to go ahead and drop it in the comment section right now, and we will probably take all those questions and cover it today. And all of you who are here from Abhilesh's family and Sushant's family and his friends, go ahead and send them a hello. I will read it out for them in case you want me to do that. So I'm going to wait for 2 more minutes before we start off the discussion. Let's see how many of them are here. All right. All right. So going ahead, in the last session, we covered a lot of details related to wills, gift deeds, what's the difference between both of them. We spoke about social media a little bit. I think we will cover furthermore in today's session as well. We spoke about in case you have loans and loan discrepancies, how to manage. We also covered details of in case you're called in to a police station as an accuser or as accused, what are your access rights and what protocols need to be followed. We covered quite a lot of details, even in terms of if you're setting up an organization, what all do you have to keep in mind, what kinds of organizations that you can probably consider while setting it up. And also, most important of all, we discussed about the intellectual property rights and all the 5 different types. So like I said, it is all available for you already in the previous video. Go ahead and watch that if you've missed it. Starting off with today's session is again with us is Sushant and Abhilesh,
Hi.
two fantastic guests who covered a lot of who shared a lot of knowledge in the previous session for all of us to understand. And both of them come with 8 years of experience and they understand law pretty well. And most important of all, they can talk to us in the common man's language, and that's fantastic. So to start off today's session, I think we will go back to the previous question that we answered partially in the previous session, Sushant and Abhilesh, is on social media. What are the rights that we have and what violations can actually happen. The reason I'm asking this is a lot of times we tend to just automatically share something, or we tend to write something which aggravates a fight or something like that, or we just put out all our emotions. Is it okay for us to do that, and what all should we keep in mind? Who wants to go first? Abhilesh, would you want to start off?
Sure, Kripalani. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So, in fact, like our constitution would promise all its citizens one aspect, that is freedom of speech. In fact, it is guaranteed as under the constitution itself. So,
Yeah.
Article 19(1)(a) would specifically deal with freedom of speech and expression. So,
Okay.
every citizen in India has absolute right to express his opinion in with respect to any topic for that matter. However, there are certain restrictions also when it comes to expression, because restrictions is in fact quite required, I would say, because it shouldn't incite any anger. It
Yeah.
shouldn't give way for any violence as such.
Okay.
Okay, so restrictions part is actually covered as very well in the constitution itself. So
Okay.
Article 19(2) would specifically deal with restrictions that
Okay.
a state could impose upon its citizens when it comes to expression of uh, ideas as well as speech.
Okay.
Okay, so what are the kinds of restrictions the state could actually impose is something that we also need to analyze and try to understand to exactly give an answer to this question. Okay,
Got it.
so any speech and expression which would upset the freedom, or rather the security of a state, that cannot be, that in fact is restricted. So a person should not express anything which would put the security of the state into jeopardy. Okay,
Okay.
that's one very important aspect. And
Okay.
likewise, there are other 7 classifications as well. So
Okay.
just to like cover the heading, I'll tell you it should not affect the this one freedom or the friendly relationship between two countries. So in fact, this particular topic or like the concept of covering the relationship with other friendly countries, it's like a highly unique, and you will find it only in the Indian Constitution. No other
Okay.
constitution in the entire world would actually have a provision where they would restrict the freedom of speech and expression in order to say which would affect the friendly relationship between the two countries. Okay.
Wow.
So
Okay.
this is
So
quite
in
unique.
case, like, let's say, we have a country A, or let's use the country C. So if I like the country C, I'm not allowed to write and just keep retaliating and keep writing whatever that I wish to, if it in case that country is a friendly country to India.
Yes, see, what matters here is you can write things about the other country as well. But again, if it's going to affect the friendly relationship between the country C as well as India, in that
Yeah.
event, yes, there can be a restriction that would be imposed upon the person. Okay,
Got it.
that's
Got it.
something that you have to. Any person who intends to write anything with respect to countries, they have to bear it in mind. So there are a
Okay.
few other restrictions as well. So it should not
Okay.
amount to contempt of court. It should not amount to, let's say, public order, and it should also it should not defame a person. Okay, so defamation is one very important concept. So in fact, it is also punishable as under the Indian Penal Code. Okay,
Got it.
as well as
Yeah.
decency and morality. That is one other aspect that so it should not incite any war, or it should not
Okay.
incite any crime. So these are the broad classifications where a person's freedom for speech and expression is regulated.
Got it. Got it. Thank you, Abhilesh. Sushant, do you have anything to add to it?
Not much, but then again, like we said in the last session, it's an occupational hazard, so we have to have our say. So, like Abhilesh said, so defamation is one aspect I also wanted to emphasize,
Yeah.
because what is defamation? People may ask. It's basically when a person A, there's a false statement or a unsubstantiated statement or allegation made against person A by person B before, in the presence of or in the hearing of other persons. Now, if it's a private conversation between A and B with each other, it cannot amount to defamation. But
Got it.
so if it's something which is publicly accessible, or somebody else, even another person can hear it. So, for example, you send an email abusing a person, saying you're a fraud or whatever, and you CC somebody else on that, or even BCC somebody else on that. That would amount to defamation. And like Abhilesh said, defamation can be a criminal offense as well as a civil right offense, which you can be sued for damages. That is, they can claim any amount as damages that has been caused to their reputation, as well as an injunction, which is basically injunction is nothing but an order where you're restrained from making such allegations which are unsubstantiated or not true. So truth is the defense to defamation. So, which is like in the last session, I just want to re-emphasize. I think Abhilesh and I had said on the last session as well. It's very important that we post not only on social media, wherever our actions and our conversations are something which is backed by verifiable facts, or some to something to substantiate what we say or what we do. And it should not be something like you said, we should not be an emotional rant on Facebook or Twitter just for the you want to rant. No, it doesn't work that way, because we live in a civilized society where the rights of everybody is balanced, and all of us owe a duty to each other to maintain that civility and the public order and law and order. And of course, the other restrictions Abhilesh has covered, I'll not
Got it, Sushant.
touch upon it. So that defamation is one thing I just wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I hope, Niladri, you also had a question similar where you put out saying about cyberbully or cybercrime, where you asked if a person commits suicide due to cyberbullying, will there be charge sheet for the accused? I think directly or indirectly they covered it, saying yes, if anything is affecting another person, you can take it to the court, and under the law,
police,
the law will take care. Yeah, correct. Okay, thank you. So the next question that I wanted to check with you is, where was that? Okay, if let's say somebody gets cheated online, like recently this question is also from one of the members of the community, where I think on a particular platform he had put up saying that he's selling something, and knowingly or unknowingly he exchanged some bank account details, and now a lot of money from his account is lost. So if anything of this kind happens, so if somebody gets cheated online, where do they have to go to? Can they go to a regular police station? What is it that they need to do, and what are the steps to follow? Sushant, do you want to take that question?
Yeah. Um, so what we need to understand is just because crime has been committed online does not mean it's not a crime. There is it's just another platform for commission of a crime. It can be digital or physical. Like simple example I can think of and give is, let's say you're coming out of the ATM with cash in your pocket and it's stolen by a thief, or you have a digi wallet from which somebody hacks into it and transfers the money from your wallet to their account or whatever. So both would constitute an act of theft. The only thing is the platform on which it has been committed. So the only addition would be if the crime has been committed online, like say even cyberbullying for that matter.
Yeah.
The other example somebody was asking, that also the only addition, maybe in addition to the old law of Indian Penal Code, would be your Information Technology Act of 2000, which provides for how cybercrime or crimes committed through online media, be it your credit card scams, phishing, skimming, call it. I mean, all these various terms are there. All these crimes can be reported, I mean, to the police,
Okay.
and you also add sections under the Information Technology Act, and they take it up.
Okay.
So initially, there was just one police station for handling all cybercrime in Bangalore. Now, if I'm not wrong, we can file a complaint in the
Police station.
jurisdictional police station where the crime has occurred, and they take it up irrespective, even though it is a crime inclusive of the Information Technology Act, and there is a cyber division which will assist them with the investigation. So these companies are all covered under your usual law, which takes care. Plus, you can also include the Information Technology Act. So that may
Got
be,
it.
in my personal opinion, the only addition to an online crime. So people can set the law into motion, even if online crime has been committed against them, with the addition of the Information
Information
Technology Act,
Technology
and
Act.
ensure that all your documents or records are kept intact, so that the investigating authority, has it easy while investigating and reaching a conclusion that yes, a crime has been committed. I think uh, we should request Abhilesh to also
Yeah.
throw some
Abhilesh,
light, because he is more of a domain expert in this. So
perfect. Yeah. Abhilesh, what are your thoughts
Thank
on
you,
it?
Trisha. So basically, cybercrime has taken the center stage these days. Then everything can be done at the luxury of your own house, or like wherever you would want to sit. And if you would want to impersonate a person, that's quite easy for a person to do. Because see,
Right.
we should also be sensitive about the fact what information that we would actually want to disclose, especially in a platform like Facebook, Twitter. Let's say take any portal for that matter.
Correct.
So what we tend to do is we tend to give out a lot of personal information. So those are things that we generally would want to have a check on to avoid cyber crimes. So generally what happens is, initially in Bangalore, we did have a cyber cell, exclusive police station, which was attached with the Commissioner of Police's office. So which used to exclusively take up only cybercrime related cases. So
Okay.
any cybercrime related cases used to be filed there. An FIR would be registered, and they used to proceed with the investigation and then take it in the legal course, filing a charge sheet, and it used to go in for a trial. However, now what they have done is they are actually training the people in the jurisdictional police station, that is the regular law and order police station. So what they do is they have afforded quite a good amount of training for a couple of officials for every police station, and all cybercrime related complaints are registered at the jurisdictional police stations. Okay.
Got it.
So one
Got
other
it.
aspect that all of the maybe victims or like general public should also be aware of is that you do not have to go to a specified police station to register your complaint. it is always advisable that you go to the jurisdictional police station, but that there is no bar for any police station, because see, like since the cybercrime happens online, it could, the transaction, I have seen like personally handled cases where a person's credit card was swiped within a span of like a couple of seconds. It was swiped in 3 different countries. So everything was done at the like thereafter, like they traced down the person as well, the accused, and they arrested him at Hyderabad. So here what happens is, a police station cannot refuse to accept a complaint. So the person could be anywhere. For example, let's say I'm traveling to Delhi, and I'm a local resident here in Bangalore. I happen to travel to Delhi, and I am a victim of a cybercrime there in Delhi. I need not have to go to Delhi. I'm like, sorry, I don't have to come back here and then lodge a complaint. I can go to any jurisdictional police station. I'm like any police station for that matter, and I can register a complaint. One other important aspect that one has to remember is, once the complaint is registered, for investigation, they could forward it to the jurisdictional police station or the place where I have actually been duped, or where I was present as the time when I was actually what I became a victim of the offense. So one other information that I would want to share is, now there's a website that is actually tabled by the central government.
Okay.
So Ministry of Health Affairs. Sorry, Ministry of Home Affairs, Home Ministry. So what they have basically done is, there is a portal, cybercrime.gov.in. So that's the website. So any incidents of cybercrime can be reported there. A person could directly go into the particular website. He did not even have to go to a jurisdictional police station or make any effort at all. He could directly go into this particular website and give an exact information with respect to what exactly he went through and how the person has been duped. Okay. So there is, in fact, a separate helpline for women as well, and women and children.
Got
it. That also would be within the same website. And one other important aspect is, the same ministry has actually pulled in close to 225 crores last year, 2019, to enhance the facilities with respect to let it be with respect to setting up of a laboratory, forensic laboratory, because here it's highly technical information. The crime was taken place through a highly systemized manner. So what we generally call as a website, there's also called something called as a dark net. So you go to darknet, you have everything under the sun, including sale of guns. Everything can be easily facilitated. So what there is a separate laboratory that are actually being set up by the central government, and this actually functions at the national level. So any data that would be collected, or any crime that is reported, would be investigated by this particular department. And we also have something called as a digital police. So the moment we register a complaint with the this particular website, which I just mentioned, cybercrime.gov.in, so they forward it to the digital police, is what we call it. So they conduct an inquiry, and then the proceedings would go forward.
Got it. In fact, I think, for anybody who's on this call, Abhilesh, most important is, if it's a cyber crime, also knowing that, you can go to a police station, because a lot of times we tend to not even think that, I can go to a police station, and there's so much panic and we don't know what to do. I think you gave us right information there, where, you go there, go to a regular police station, lodge a complaint, and go to cybercrime.gov.in, where you can also separately write another complaint if required, and every police station will take it up, irrespective of which area do you belong to. Probably, like he mentioned, they can go back to the location where it happened, but however, it will be taken care of. Is that right, Abhilesh?
Yes, just a small correction there. So once you could choose whether you would want to initiate it through the website, or if you would want to go to the police station. So it cannot be done parallelly, because registering of two FIRs is actually illegal, is what it would say. Yes.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you. Thanks for that information also, Abhilesh. So the next thing that I wanted to know is if you can talk about, like, let's say I bought a product online, or let's say I physically also picked up a product and it's a faulty product. And yeah, there is a warranty and everything which is available. How do I go about with this process in case that the person who sold it to me is not supportive, and like let's say a very expensive product that I've picked up, how do I reclaim and take care of all of these things? Abhilesh, can you share some insights?
Sure, Kripalini. So this would basically fall as a consumer dispute. Okay.
Hmm.
So there are a couple of classifications, like that we would want to make. So initially there was like consumer disputes. Whenever there is a consumer dispute, so what is very important is who is a consumer. So
Hmm.
a consumer could be any person who's buying a product or who's also availing a service. So a lot of
Hmm.
people have a misconception telling that, okay, fine, I have actually booked a particular service, and since this is service oriented, I might not fall under the consumer category. Please don't have such an impression. In fact,
Hmm.
you would be classified as a consumer, and you do have a recourse. Okay,
Got
so
it.
we do have a tribunals set up. So
Hmm.
what happens is there has to be some deficiency.
Hmm.
Okay, and uh, based on that deficiency, you could actually set it right. For example,
Hmm.
so physically going to a shop and buying a product is one aspect of it, whereas
Hmm.
buying it from e-commerce websites is another aspect of it.
Hmm.
So earlier Consumer Protection Act, it did not make a huge, like maybe like did not cater to the nuances of like the outboom of e-commerce,
Hmm.
because what used to happen was like all these e-commerce websites, like let's say like Amazon or
Hmm.
Flipkart, they are just hosting, they are just
Yeah,
portals which would host separate individual sellers. Okay,
got it.
so here one aspect what the Flipkart or like Amazon, I'm just giving quoting examples here.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
what the general defense used to be of such a e-commerce website used to be, we are just a portal, we are
Hmm.
hosting these people, and we are
Hmm.
just facilitating the buyer to the
Correct.
consumer. So
Yeah.
they used to wash up their hands, telling that we have no role in it.
Hmm.
However, the recent proposed like enactment, that is like 2019 Consumer
Hmm.
Protection Act, it would very specifically, in fact, they have made voluminous changes
Hmm.
also to ensure that such portals are also equally accountable for any
Got it.
consumer disputes.
Hmm.
So again, there is a one other insight that I would want to like
Hmm.
share. So earlier enactment, there is again three classifications of tribunals here. Okay,
Hmm.
so consumer state consumer dispute redressal forum. So starting
Hmm.
from the lowest one, that would be the district consumer redressal forum, first one.
Hmm.
On from there, like you have state forum. From there, you have national forum. Okay,
Hmm.
so there are the three basic classification, and this classification is also based on the pecuniary jurisdiction, meaning to
Hmm.
say, let's say like I buy a product which is like worth up to 20 lakhs as per the
Hmm.
previous enactment.
Hmm.
So anything within the valuation of a 20 lakh, I have
Hmm.
to go to a district consumer redressal forum.
Hmm.
Whereas anything above 20 lakhs up to 1 crore, it used to be the state forum, and anything
Okay.
above 1 crore, it used to be the national forum.
Got
However,
it.
with the present enactment, that is the 2019 enactment, there is
Hmm.
like a substantial change in the pecuniary jurisdiction aspect here. So what happens is any dispute
Hmm.
between 1 to 10 crores, it goes up to like up to 1 crore, it's state sorry, uh, district consumer redressal forum.
Hmm.
Above 1 crore, within 10 crores, it has to go to the state forum.
Got it.
Anything above 10 crores, it generally goes to the supreme sorry, national forum.
Got
So
it.
what one consumer needs to do is he also has to address a notice. It's
Hmm.
not mandatory that a legal notice should be addressed. However,
Hmm.
it is suggested or most preferable that you document every
Hmm.
aspect of it. You tell, okay, fine, this is the deficiency that I noticed in the service, or this is the deficiency I
Hmm.
noticed in the product. So
Hmm.
once there is a proper documentation of that particular aspect,
Hmm.
you are giving an opportunity for the seller to fix the issue. Okay,
Got
so
it.
you also
Okay.
give a very like you give them a timeline, so within
Hmm.
which like the issue could generally be fixed. If
Hmm.
in case the issue is not fixed, in that event you have all the rights to approach the concerned forum and
Hmm.
seek a redressal of your issue.
Got it. Got it. So that means it's not directly go and lodge a complaint, give them enough time with probably a written communication saying you're giving them time and then go ahead and do. So for all of us who go up on social media where we post saying this is a bad product and don't buy it from here, I got cheated. With that, it's good that you're sharing information. With that, if you can also go out and, officially inform through a written communication saying, you want this to be taken care of, and then you can also take it to the court. Now, how do they take it to the court, Abhilesh? So where do they lodge the complaint and what do they have to
Yes,
do?
sure. So what happens is you have it's in fact like the entire process is framed in such a manner that it's like highly convenient for the consumers to approach. Okay, you need not necessarily have to engage an advocate. You yourself personally can directly approach the concerned forum, let's say district forum, state forum, or national forum directly. Okay, there's no bar for the parties to appear in person. Okay,
Got it.
so it could be done online as well as it could be done physically. So generally, like these forums are presided over by a bench of 3 members. So depending upon like a state forum as well as a district forum. However, at the national forum, it's a minimum of 5 people who are presiding over the cases. Okay.
Got it.
So a person could physically go to these forums, file a formal complaint. So it has to be done in 5 copies. So 5 copies will have to be given to the complaint in 5 sets will have to be given to the forum submitted along with accompanying documents. Okay, so including a copy of the warranty card, depending on the product or the service that you have rendered and what communications that you have had. All those aspects will have to be documented properly, and it could be filed. So once that is filed, an opportunity to the other side, that is the service provider or the service provider is basically given. They would generally appear before the forum, and they would also have an opportunity to file their objections, written objections. Okay, so it would range from somewhere between they fixing the issue or giving an assurance that it could be fixed and they do not have sufficient time to fix the issue, or it could also be that no, like we have taken everything within our sphere that's within their powers. However, this was like a technical issue which could not be covered. So whatever defense that they could take.
Have.
Okay. So generally the span in which that you are also considering like these disputes to get resolved is quite I would say like very reasonable going by court standards. So you could yes, consumer forums are like really consumer friendly, and you're looking at period of like generally on an average like 6 months. You could definitely ensure that there is some positive outcome from the entire year.
Yes. Got it. Thank you so much, Abhilesh. Sushant, do you want to share something on that?
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of points.
Sure, Sushant.
Abhilesh has, I think, pretty much covered, including the procedural aspects.
Yeah.
But so one thing, a couple of things people need to keep in mind is that they need to be a consumer, either of goods or services, which is purchased or availed of on a physical platform or a digital platform. That doesn't matter. Now, consumer by consumer I mean you are using it for your use, for your consumption. So you're not using it for resale or as an investment. These these scenarios would take you out of the ambit of the definition of consumer, and then you cannot avail of the consumer rights which Abhilesh has elaborated upon.
Yes.
So that is one thing people need to keep in mind. Secondly, Consumer Protection Act is being a specific legislation brought to protect and enforce the rights of consumers and give them a forum to address their grievances. It can be used. I mean, it can be it can be used to as a forum to address their grievances, irrespective of any other clause that may be there in the terms and conditions of the warranty card or the invoice or whatever under which the product has come. So by this I mean, if there, let's say there is something called as an arbitration clause, which usually entails that you have to undergo the arbitration procedure and other, or it may say subject to jurisdiction of a civil court
of a certain,
certain city. So these things do not matter. If it's a consumer dispute, you're a consumer, then the Consumer Protection Act can be used to enforce your rights. So these are some things. And yes, again I'm emphasizing physical or digital goods or services doesn't matter. If you're a
Got
consumer,
it.
you can use it. You can
Use that.
use the
Yeah.
act to your
Just
benefit.
to add on,
Got
I
it.
think
Yeah.
Yeah.
jurisdiction is one very important topic which I think Sushant covered, touched upon. So
Yeah.
one other aspect that I would also want to say, like a consumer dispute need not necessarily have to be filed according to the 2019 enactment. So it need not necessarily have to be filed at a place where the service provider or the goods where it was originally purchased. It need not necessarily have to be done there. So, for
Okay.
example, any product that is like bought online, it's actually, let's say, like it originates from Delhi, it goes to Mumbai, and from Mumbai it finally reaches Bangalore.
Yeah.
Okay, so under such circumstances, me being a consumer in Bangalore, I could choose whether to file it in Delhi, whether to or to file it in Mumbai or in Bangalore. So this
Bangalore.
is one
Got it.
other liberty that a consumer would generally have.
Got it.
So
Thank you so much, Abhilesh.
that's
I
it.
think this cleared a lot of clouds for people who didn't have any idea of how to do it. And specifically, I think for a lot of us, when we really get angry, there's no customer service. All that we used to do is, I think we used to just go up on Facebook or wherever possible and tell people saying, "Don't buy any products from these guys. Their services is bad." Now we know there's ways that we can also actually work around. And like you said, the positive news is within 6 months, mostly we will get a positive response on this.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you
But see,
so
that
much.
can again, I mean, that cannot
Yeah.
be guaranteed.
Yeah,
That
that's correct.
Correct.
timeline
It
or
depends.
the
Yeah.
Yeah,
result, result
No,
and
in fact,
timeline we
yeah,
cannot guarantee because
I think this session we forgot to
yeah,
mention this, Sushant. So, guys, whatever that we are trying to put forward here is basic knowledge and basic things that mostly happens normally, and it does not in any way mean saying this is the best formula based on case to case. Everything routes into a different direction, but this is only for basic common man's knowledge of understanding how does law work. Thank you
yeah,
for bringing that up, Sushant.
yeah.
Otherwise,
It's
I
important
think
for
we would
us.
have given, yeah, we would have given a
Yeah,
wrong information.
correct.
So the next thing, the most important question, I've at least got some 5, 6 people writing to me and asking me about this is, Sushant, is about domestic violence, where, people are trying to saying, what are the laws for domestic violence? Because I saw, they forwarded a video to me saying, okay, a woman is beating up a man. And then they're like, okay, what's going to happen? Can men also claim on domestic violence? Is it right? How does the law really work? Is it gender neutral? And how, if a woman and a man go and file complaints on domestic violence? If you guys can talk about it, will be very nice, Sushant.
Yeah. So the Domestic Violence Act of 2005 or 2006, the name itself suggests that it's only for protecting the women. The act is titled Protection of Women Against Domestic Violence, 2005 or 2006. So as of now, as far as the Domestic Violence Act stands, only a woman can approach the concerned police station to file her complaint, which is then taken forward by a metropolitan magistrate or the jurisdictional magistrate, depending on if you're in the metropolitan city or in the any other area. That is one. So but we need to understand that. So people may ask, why only women, why not the men? So this is done more of a what do you say, I don't know what the right politically correct word would be, but this was done to address whatever the parliament felt was going on in society and what needs to be corrected. But
Got it.
then again, the general sections of the Indian Penal Code are available to the men to initiate, like assault or causing grievous hurt. There are specific sections under the Indian Penal Code which speak of filing a complaint for physical harm or physical injury done to a person. So that is gender neutral. You can whether you're a man or a woman, you can always file a complaint under that. Specifically, the Domestic Violence Act, as it stands as of today, can be initiated only by the woman.
Got it, Sushant.
And usually it yeah, sorry, yes, you were saying.
No, go ahead, Sushant.
Yeah, so that's how it stands today. And of course, see, as all other things in law, just because a complaint is filed does not mean that's the gospel truth. Whatever you say, whether it's taking us back to our previous question of a consumer dispute or a domestic violence
Yeah.
offense, it has to be substantiated and proved. So just because you go to a police station and file your complaint, or go to the magistrate and file a complaint, does not mean that the other side has no rights to defend himself or to prove that he has not committed the crime. This is done only to defame him, harass him. All these are defenses that they can take, and then they have to prove it, of course. So both sides have to prove their
Have
case,
to
and
prove.
whoever is proving the case better,
Hmm.
the court will accordingly decide the matter. So
Got it.
yeah, I think that should cover the broad acts of
Yeah,
domestic
I got
violence.
that, Sushant.
Yeah,
Anything from you,
I think
Abhilesh?
Abhilesh should maybe
Yeah.
elaborate more.
Sure. So what happens is like domestic violence. Like here in India, we actually have a gender. We do not have a gender neutral law, unlike many other countries, European countries to be more specific.
Hmm.
So back in US, we have a gender neutral law with respect to domestic violence. Not necessary that like only a woman can file, but even men can file domestic violence cases as against women.
Hmm.
So here in Bangalore or in India, like it's generally handled by the magistrate court. So what is very important is, in fact, this enactment was brought in 2005 just to ensure that there is like additional protection that could be accorded to women as well as children. So the relief, if we could see what are the reliefs, because we already have at one hand we already have other laws which would sufficiently provide or like security irrespective of whether with sex and creed and things. However, no, like what was the necessity for having a domestic violence law is like they focus on few very certain areas. Okay, so domestic violence law again is like the procedure that generally is followed in conducting this domestic violence act, a domestic violence case is in parlance with CRPC, that is Criminal Procedure Code. It follows.
Okay.
It does not follow a civil law.
So
Okay.
that means this complaint can go to a police station. Is that right, Abhilesh? Or this has
No,
to go to?
here generally the involvement of police station is very minimal or very restricted, except for service of summons.
Yeah.
Okay. So generally, like what has happened or what is like beneficial, what was the addition that was made to the existing law by who is appointed. Okay, so protection officers are generally people who are appointed by the government.
Got it.
Okay, in consultations with a lot of NGOs. Okay, so the protection officer in almost 99.9% of the cases is going to be a woman who would actually be what like they feel more comfort zone. Like the comfort zone is like much higher when it comes to a woman like sharing her grievances with another woman. Okay,
Got
so
it.
just to ensure that they do not have any reservations with respect to the harassment that they would have been meted out with. So they
Got
have
it.
protection officers. There are two ways of like initiating domestic violence proceedings. Okay, so first way would be to like any aggrieved person or like any woman who is being subjected to any kind of harassment would directly approach a protection officer. So for every jurisdiction, there would be a protection officer who is engaged. Okay, and you could definitely get their numbers from any social helpline numbers. Okay, so jurisdiction wise, there would be a protection officer. You could approach that protection officer, give a written complaint. You need not. It's not mandatory that you have to give a written complaint. In fact, the protection officer would have all the liberty to like just make note of your entire facts, and then
Got
he
it.
would suggest you how to take it forward. So what happens is, if the protection officer comes to a conclusion, yes, you have been subjected to domestic violence, in that event, she will formulate a report based on your requirements. So that would again be forwarded to the magistrate, and thereafter a case would be registered as against the persons, and
Got
that
it.
would be the respondents, and the proceedings would go forward. One
Got it,
important
Abhilesh.
aspect is one other option before I come to the
Sure.
important aspect. So
Yeah.
one other aspect is you could directly approach the magistrate court and you could file a written complaint also directly before the magistrate, uh, um, documenting the fact that you have been subjected to domestic violence. And here the reliefs are also like mainly classified into four headings basically. So the order that could be passed by the magistrate could be a protection order. So there have been instances where the husband and wife might be living separately. Okay, and the husband would come and cause some hindrances at the wife's place of work or maybe at her residence. So there you actually ask for a protection order. Okay, so prohibition order could be passed or residential orders could also be passed. So residential order would be a aspect where like let's say the husband puts his wife out of the house. Okay, in that event she might be rendered homeless. In that event the husband can be compelled to provide an equal accommodation based on their standard of living to the wife,
Okay.
okay, with respect to residential orders. And
Hmm.
with respect, again, I think I have covered about protection orders.
Yeah.
And one other aspect is compensatory orders. Okay, so
Hmm.
for example, the wife might not have any source of income personally.
Hmm.
So she
Hmm.
might be a homemaker who is completely dependent upon her husband. In
Hmm.
that event, yes, the husband will be duty bound to maintain his wife. And again,
Got it.
these also are governed by a set of rules and regulations and surrounding circumstances
Yeah.
would play a crucial role in ascertaining the quantum of maintenance that
Hmm.
a wife would be entitled to. And one other aspect is custody orders. So
Hmm.
custody orders are like when a person would have children, when the
Hmm.
couple would have a children, and how they would want to, let's say the father is in physical custody of the children. In
Hmm.
that event, how exactly, the custody, because the non-custodial parent should be accorded some visitation rights to the children. Okay,
Hmm.
so how that
Hmm.
should be worked out is again covered under Domestic Violence Act.
Got
One
it, Abhilash.
primary thing that also has to be remembered when it
Hmm.
comes to Domestic Violence Act is most of it is calculated in terms of money. Okay, so
Hmm.
most of it, except for protection orders and few other very restricted aspects, most of it is valued as a compensation. So
Hmm.
any harassment, compensatory orders are being passed. So that is
Got it.
one important aspect. And
Got it,
most
Abhilash.
important thing of everything to remember here is that there has to be a shared household and there
Hmm.
has to be a domestic relationship. So a
Yes.
person, aggrieved person, that is a woman who intends to file a complaint, she
Hmm.
should be in a domestic relationship with the other person against whom she
Okay.
intends to seek any order whatsoever.
So when you say domestic relationship, a live-in relationship is also okay, Abhilash, or should it only be
Yes.
married?
No, no, need not necessarily. It could very well, recent Supreme Court judgments very well classify live-in relationship also. They recognize live-in relationships.
Hmm.
Therefore, like any person who has been in a live-in relationship could also approach a court as under Domestic Violence Act.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Abhilash. People, please go ahead and put your questions. I will be taking all your questions and asking both these gentlemen here. There's one very interesting question, a follow-up question to what both of you were addressing. I'll read out the question so either of you can take that. For gender-specific law, there is dowry law, attempt to rape law, domestic violence, all are for women. Which law are made for men? Is there a attempt for rape law for men? Is there anything of that kind? I think if you can address the last one. Is there an
Yes.
attempt to rape law for men?
Okay. So this, in fact, is covered within the scope of Indian Penal Code itself.
Hmm.
Okay. So one could, they would be equally, accountable or
Hmm.
answerable. There's no
Hmm.
gender bias in the Indian Penal Code. So it is in fact a gender neutral law. Therefore, like any person who is aggrieved can definitely approach a jurisdictional police station in this particular event,
Hmm.
and they could set the law into motion.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Abhilash. So, yeah, the next thing that I wanted to know from the list of questions which was shared is, let's say I'm choosing a motor insurance. Like everybody, every year on year, we go ahead and we renew it and we do all these things. So, what are those things that you suggest that we keep in mind while choosing a motor insurance? I ask you this specifically because I've gone through trouble and I know how much it's difficult to legally take it up. So, if you can shed some light, it will be very nice. So, Shant, would you want to take that question?
Yes, Kripa. So one thing we need to keep in mind is while going through, we should be again, like as I mentioned last time, the same thing as we are signing loan agreements with banks. In
Yeah.
insurance policies, also the devil lies in the details. So we have to read it carefully to ensure that it's a comprehensive policy, which is in common parlance known as a bumper to bumper policy. So
Mm.
it covers all aspects of the any damage, any mechanical failure, or any other defect in the car or the two wheeler. So
Mm.
and we also one very important aspect that needs to be covered, which is usually covered. So most
Mm.
insurance policies are pretty much standard, and it usually covers these things. One important aspect is something called as third party claims clause.
Mm.
So that is basically, if you can show that you have complied. Now let's say there's an accident. Now I
Okay.
am driving, and Abhilesh is on his two-wheeler. So if I collide with him, and he suffers some he falls from, he suffers a small fracture or something, then if I have complied with the terms of my insurance policy, the first and most primary one being that I've paid my premiums on time. That's most important. I am I'm a holder of a valid driving license recognized in India, and I'm following the other traffic rules. Like for example, I'm not jumped a signal, or I'm supposed to wear my seat belt.
Yeah.
These are basic rules. Or I'm not on my phone while I'm driving, which has
Okay.
reduce my concentration or things like that. So because these are things which the insurance company can say, look, it's your own negligence. So we need to ensure we comply to the insurance policy as well as the traffic rules and regulations. And in that case, and if your policy has this third party damage or third party claims clause, then even if Abhilesh makes a claim against me, I can always
Route it to the
route it
insurance.
to the insurance company, and they will cover the claim. So that in that way, I'm personally not paying. The
Okay.
premiums are already paid, so the damage for Abhilesh also is taken care of by the insurance
Insurance
provider for
company.
of my vehicle. So these are
Yes.
some very basic things. Then again, if an accident occurs, a minor accident where nobody is hurt, one vehicle collides with another vehicle, there are scratches, the bumper is broken, the light has come off. These things usually happen on our roads, especially Bangalore
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
I mean, instead of wasting time getting on the road and arguing with each other, and almost coming to blows with each other, we just it's a again, if your insurance policy is comprehensive and you have complied with all the terms, two most important ones being payment of premium, timely payment of your premium, and holding a valid driver's license. For a learner's license, there are some other aspects. Like if you are holding a valid learner's license, then you need to be accompanied by a person who holds a valid driver's license.
Valid
So
driver
these are
license. Yeah.
certain other rules and regulations. I'll not go into the details.
Hmm.
So these broadly, if these terms are complied with, then you can always maybe register. If there is some offense, you can just register an FIR in the nearest police station. Nothing to be scared, because I use the term FIR. It is
Yeah.
just to show that such an incident has taken place, and then that can be forwarded along with your written complaint to the police. You can forward it to the insurance company to claim for the damages under your policy. And then once these things are covered and you're complied with any other requirements of the policy provider, your
Yeah.
Insurance will come back to you. So
Got it. Thank
we
you,
need to,
Sushant.
yeah, we just need to be careful that everything is covered,
Yeah.
all times of and uh, we have not done something ourselves which could
Purposefully.
yeah, purposefully or negligently, which could have led to the incident or the accident,
Accident.
as the case may be. So that is something we need to be extremely careful about. Otherwise, yeah, it's a pretty simple procedure. So my advice is, keep a comprehensive insurance policy which broadly covers these pointers I've suggested, and which Abhilesh also would add on to. And instead of fighting with each other on the road, just move on. If a complaint is required to be filed with the police, it's a formality. Just file it, forward it to your claim to the claim section of your insurance provider, or anyway, take. And oh yeah, one most important thing, please take photographs immediately. Now everything's
Okay.
everybody has a
Camera.
mobile with a
Yeah.
camera, extremely good quality cameras and WhatsApp and things like that. So please take photographs immediately of the damage that has occurred to the vehicle. Now if let's say the vehicle from behind has collided with you, so take a photo of that. It's not to use it against the other person, anything of that sort. It's just that while processing your claim, it becomes easy to show that yes, this is the damage that has occurred, and it can also give a clue of how and why it has occurred. And and they may send someone to inspect and things like that. So once all those formalities are completed, your claim should come back to you. So like
Got
for
it,
example,
Sushant.
yeah, my personal example I can give is, last year
Sure.
the tree fell on the roof of my car. So the roof was dented and damaged to quite a large extent.
Yeah.
So we immediately took photographs of the tree resting on the roof of my car, and the you can see that the roof is dented. Took photo. It happened in the night, so took photographs immediately. Again the next morning for more clarity. sent it to our insurance agent who helps us with the processing of claims. And the claim form is sent, those other formalities are completed. In this scenario, see, there's no requirement of filing a FIR because there's no offense that has occurred. It's a natural phenomenon. Heavy rains, tree falls. And in
Correct.
Bangalore, especially South Bangalore, it's very common for trees to fall. So on your cars and so 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 that's it's a simple thing, nothing to be worried about.
Yeah.
Apart from
But
the
just that
two,
we have
again,
to
I would
get the bumper to bumper insurance.
bumper to bumper with the ensure there's a third party damage clause also, so that if somebody raises a claim against you and you have complied with the policy, you don't have to personally pay from your pocket, your insurance company pays. So even sometimes what happens is motor vehicle cases complaints are filed. So I'll just touch upon this briefly, so that just in a sentence or two, even if a motor vehicle complaint is filed against you, if you can show that at the time of the incident you had a valid insurance policy and driver's license with which you have complied, and it has a third party damage clause, the insurance company will take care of reimburse whatever damages that are to be paid will be taken care of by the insurance company. So even in such a case, if you receive a notice from a court saying a motor vehicle case has been filed against you, if all these clauses are covered and subject to the facts and circumstances of each case, which are unique, with that rider, I would end my answer. Subject to that, you don't have to get too worried if you receive a notice in a motor vehicle claims case.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you, Sushant. Abhilesh, do you have anything to add to it?
Just be cautious of the cover, the insurance cover that you would generally take, because since like there are variety of like insurance policy that are generally available. Especially be cautious about the there is a trend again where like a lot of websites do host the premiums at a very low rate and things. One general mistake that consumers do in such scenarios is they do not take time to read into the clauses, or especially the covenants that would be present in this one agreement, especially in like people who purchase online insurances. So just a word of caution for them, be completely aware as to like what kind and type of insurance cover that you are choosing, because that ultimately we generally do not claim any insurance when things are working fine. You go there only in the need of the hour, and at that point in time the insurance company generally would say, was no, this particular aspect or this particular damage is not covered under your policy, therefore we cannot give any reimbursement. So be cautious as to like what you're getting into, have a complete idea, and then yes, everything would be written down there. So all that it would require from your end is just be vigilant, go through the conditions, and then choose your cover.
Got it. So that means things to keep in
sorry,
mind.
Kripalini.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Sushant.
just one thing I really forgot. One sentence.
Sure.
Take your action immediately. Don't delay. As soon as the incident or the accident has occurred, whether it's taking your photographs and contacting your insurance provider, or if required, filing an FIR with the jurisdictional police for the purpose of processing your claim, please do it immediately. Don't wait for a week or 2 weeks and then think of processing your claim. That's
Got it. Yeah. So to just cover like what Sushant and Abhilesh mentioned is, first thing is, while you're getting your insurance, please make sure you read those clauses very clearly and understand it. Get a bumper to bumper and also probably the third party insurance, so that you are taken care of and everything else is there. But again, when they say that you are taken care of, it does not mean you are negligently driving, you're drunken driving, you're jumping signals, or you're not wearing seat belts. Any of this, the insurance company will not take care of it for you, in spite of you having everything at the best of packages. And once this has been done, and in case there is an accident or anything that happens, then immediately get into action where you claim for it immediately with proper photographs and everything taken. Is that right? Did I put it together?
Yes, you did, I think.
Got it. Okay. So my follow-up question to the same thing is, Abhilesh, if you can answer this, is, okay, let's say there's an accident that happened, and again, I'm basing this on a personal experience, and somebody else also who had asked a question on this. Is, let's say there's an accident that's happened and you have to immediately now rush to the hospital. So while you're rushing to the hospital, is there something that you have to take care of even before you go there, before you go to the hospital? Or is it like, I first go to the police station, lodge the complaint, and then the hospital? So what are those things that we have to keep in mind while an accident happens, Abhilesh?
I'll basically give you a very general perception, and it
Sure.
cannot be like very specific, because it depends on like a gravity of the accident as well as the situation, and like completely like a situation oriented.
Got it, Abhilash.
So one protocol, let me not cover the fact where like one has to take like medical attention, immediate medical attention and things. So we will try to cover the concept topic only with from the legal perspective. Okay. So the moment there is an accident, yes, you have to take like depending upon the gravity of the accident, you have to take medical help and things. Apart from that, generally, like what one needs to do is immediately inform the police station, jurisdictional police station. So again, one immediate question that a lot of people might have is, okay, fine, how do I know? Like I'm traveling on a highway, I might not know any specific place or like a jurisdictional police station and things. So please bear in mind, there is a control center 100. Call up 100. So what happens is only in cities we have a specified classification, that is like a traffic police station. When it comes to towns or like villages, we do not have any separate police station which would cater only to traffic accidents and motor vehicle accidents. Okay, so there the general law and order police station would be empowered to receive complaints. Okay, so the first thing that like would be advisable is, in the event that you have met with an accident, is call up 100, immediately inform them of the accident, and you also will have to give as much as possible the information, surrounding information, to identify your locality. So one other aspect that one has to bear in mind is, the moment you call up 100, it's going to go for a central server room. Okay, they are people who might not be from the locality from where you are calling, or like they wouldn't have visited your locality or the place where the accident might have occurred. Okay, so one thing that you need to bear in mind is, give them as much description as possible in identifying the locality of where the accident has taken place. Okay. So the next steps would be that like immediate medical attention, as I earlier mentioned, that has to be given. And also please bear in mind, like a doctor cannot refuse a treatment only because, yes, they might say, okay, fine, sir, like FIR has to be done, or like you have to inform the police. Until you inform the police, since like this is an accident case, we cannot administer you treatment. So that cannot be done, because as per Motor Vehicles Act, it is mandatory that a doctor cannot deny to administer first aid to the victims, accident victims. Okay? So what generally happens is, once you visit the hospital, so they also raise it as a medical legal case. Okay, MLC case. In fact, report from the hospital would also be sent across to the jurisdictional police station where the hospital is located, and thereafter, like, it takes a legal recourse. So one other important aspect to remember, or like rather do, is you'll be given a free copy of the medical legal report as well. Okay, as victims, you will be, as at the time of discharging, you generally get a report of it. So what happens once you report it to the police station is, they'll dispatch the nearest police station people to like to the scene. Okay, my general advice to any people who have been involved in an accident is, please do not panic and flee from the place. I've seen like lot of cases where, out of like they start panicking, and in middle of the accident they try to flee from the place along with their vehicle. So please do not do that, because it is again mandatory for you to like switch off your vehicle, be there, stay at the spot of the accident.
Got it.
So once you stay there, like again, medical help and things, that would be a different aspect. So one other thing, what happens is, the police would register a FIR. Okay. The police would seize both the vehicles which is involved in an accident, and they would write a report. So what happens is, information is sent to the regional transport office, RTO office. They would be informed, and a person from the RTO office would visit the police station, or where the vehicle is situated. They would come to the spot, and they would want to inspect the vehicle. They generally inspect the vehicle, and they write up a report. This is basically done to ascertain if the accident occurred due to any technical glitches, any technical reasons, because of a brake failure, of any other like technical grounds. So they would inspect the vehicle, and they would permit you to take your vehicle back. So what happens is, the RTO people would draw up a report, and that report is actually again sent back to the police station. Okay, so based on that particular report, that is when a person who has been involved in an accident would be entitled to get his vehicle released. So there are a few other
Until that
formalities.
report is done, they cannot get the
They cannot release the
vehicle.
vehicle.
Okay.
So one other aspect is once the report is received at the police station, it would be part and parcel of the charge sheet that the police would want to file before the concerned magistrate. So the police would investigate into the accident. They would want to find out the reason what led to the accident, if it was negligence, contributory negligence of another party, or any technical glitches. All these aspects would be inspected, and a spot mahaja would be done. So this is something very important that every person would have to remember. Yes, once you are involved in an accident, don't try to move your vehicle away from that position. Try to retain the originality, meaning to say that once, let's say, it happens right in the middle of the road, yes, please just move away from the vehicle. Just ensure that you are safe and secure, and leave the vehicle as it is, because the police would want to draw a spot mahajar report. So the police would visit the place. Once you inform the control center, the police would visit the place. They inspect the entire surroundings, so including tire marks, everything would be taken into consideration. Okay, so they drop a report, they take photographs, and again, if in case you are not that greatly injured in the accident, stay back, take maximum photographs as possible to document how exactly the accident did occur. Okay, so once this thing is done, post what happens is the police drop a report, and they'll take reports from the eyewitnesses as well. So there are people who would have seen the accident occurring. So they're called as eyewitnesses, and they generally come before the court to speak of what exactly and how the accident did occur. Okay.
Got it.
So
Got it.
in fact, some very interesting developments used to happen earlier, where people, general public, they felt harassed. Okay, this is
for
they
coming
felt
in as
harassed.
yeah
And helping accident victims. So
okay.
2016 there was a guidelines that was proposed by the central government, and which was again approved by the Supreme Court, and it's part of a judgment as well. So where any bystander or a person who would see the accident occur, he need not necessarily have to be a eyewitness who would have seen the accident occur. But let's say he's just passing and he notices that there's been an accident. He can actually help the victims who have been involved in an accident, and he could choose. He has the liberty to choose whether he would want to be a witness or not. Prior to that, the situation always used to be that people used to be skeptical. Okay, there's an accident. If I would want to go and help that person, I would be roped into a case. I would be made a witness there. I have to go give statements. I have to be called before the court numerous times. However, the 2016 judgment of the Supreme Court would very specifically state that such a person need not be compelled, and there has been a fleet of liberties, or just to ensure the person who's reporting has all the convenience. So one important aspect that he has to remember is they do not even have to disclose their personal information.
Okay.
Generally, it used to be that any witness will have to identify himself, give his proof, and regular exercises, routine exercises that had to be followed. However, in this scenario, you need not even have to identify yourself. All that you need to do is just go there, because see, this development in fact came in when there was the mortality rate in fact increased. So accident victims used to succumb to injuries, and deaths, close to 50% of deaths could have been averted if in case they had received a timely medical advice or treatment. So just to ensure that people who would want to help out, they're not they don't feel harassed in any manner.
Correct.
These developments have taken place, so don't hesitate to help anybody. And the police would investigate into the issue. They would file a charge sheet. They'll also, in the charge sheet, they'll also cite who is responsible for the accident and things. And it would be taken up as a rash and negligent driving or hit and run case.
Whatever, whichever is the category that it comes into. So most important is, guys, while you go for medical help, please make sure that the 100 is called and you've notified exactly saying where is the accident that's happened. And please do wait for the police to come. Do not move your vehicle. Do not move it to any other place. Take as many photographs as possible. Once you reach the hospital, in case a case is still not filed, then get your medical legal medico-legal case report. Is that
MLC
right?
report.
Yeah,
That's correct.
MLC report. Please make sure that you have your MLC report in hand. And if you are the one who's driving it or somebody else has caused the accident, both the vehicles will be seized in case it goes into the police. In case a case is registered, both the vehicles are seized. You have to wait for the entire report to be generated before you can get your vehicle released. And if any of you see an accident, don't be worried. Like Abhilesh mentioned, you can go ahead and be an eyewitness, because you will not be harassed, and there is enough protection and stuff like that to take care of any citizen who's trying to do something good for the country. Is there anything else, Sushant, that you would want to add to this?
Nothing except that now the Good Samaritan is legally recognized. So you can be a Good Samaritan without having to worry about any legal implications for you. Like Abhilesh said, even your identity need not be revealed.
Yeah.
An FIR is not a mandatory prerequisite for the hospital to admit you. So you can be the Good Samaritan to report the accident to the police or to help the victim get immediate medical help. So do not worry, do not panic. Help. Your Good Samaritan nature is now legally
Sushant, we can't hear you. You're breaking.
By the government as well as the Supreme Court judgments.
Got it. Thank you, Sushant. Thanks for that. So the next thing that I wanted to check with you is, let's say Abhilesh, because
Now
I
can
think
you hear me?
Sushant. Yeah, now I can hear you, Sushant. I think there's some network glitch. You're frozen on the screen as well. Okay, Abhilesh, so if you can take this question like before Sushant fixes his internet. So I just wanted to know, saying... Yeah, I think he's trying to fix it. Let's say, Abhilesh, they're saying there is some birth in the family or there's some death that's occurred in the family. What is it that legally we should take care of? Like, if somebody is born or if somebody, we've lost a family member for whatever the reason might be, legally, what all should we take care of?
Okay, so in case of any birth these days, the general issue that person used to contact an advocate is only like very limited in case of births, because the name change is the only aspect that generally people would turn up to a advocate. So the moment one thing that just ensure that you take the birth certificate, which is generally facilitated by the hospital itself these days. Only thing that one needs to bear in mind is the name of the child. So you not necessarily have to name the child then and there. So earlier they used to be just for the birth certificate they used to give a particular name. And important aspect is you have to give a correct date, because we have had several litigations also in this part. So just to land some government jobs, people used to manipulate their birth dates as well. So just ensure that you have the correct dates on birth certificates. Just ensure that the names of the father as well as the mother is correctly depicted. There shouldn't be any issue. Mistakes that would generally should have crept in. Have a check for that. So in the event of a death of a family member, so one needs to ensure immediate action is you have to secure the death certificate. That is highly important. So just ensure that you procure the death certificate. Post which any prudent person will also have to make a search for a will, if in case that person the deceased would have left behind. Okay, and if in case there is no will in that event, it generally follows the usual succession as per Indian Succession Act, or depending upon the personal law that they are governed. So if in case you do find a will, I think last occasion we did talk about what happens or how a will should be probated, how property should be dealt with. So
if you can quickly just mention it for somebody who's not joined the call last time, Abhilesh, quickly if you can tell about the will also.
Sure. So will would be the intention of the testator, that is the person who would want to write the will. So there is no maximum age that I would rather rephrase that. So there is no minimum age has to be 18 years. Any person who is a major can write a will. Okay, and there has to be at least 2 attesting witnesses who would see the testator drawing up the will and affixing his signature before they would affix their signature into the will again could cover both movable as well as immovable property. So here, ancestral property which has fallen to the testator's share can be written off in a will. However, ancestral property as such cannot be written off in a will. Okay. Just to give a very small example, let's say there are five people in a Hindu joint family, and I also happen to be one among them. Where there is no partition, I cannot write off the ancestral property through a will. If in case that portion of property falls into my share, or my interest in the ancestral property can be again written off in a will. Will is not mandatorily registration is not mandatory when it comes to a will. It is optional. However, it is always suggested that it is in writing, and the person who is making a will also ensures that he appoints an executor. Post his demise, one person will have to take charge of the entire properties. He would manage the properties until the intention of the testator is met with respect to execution of the properties.
Got it. Thank you, Abhilesh. So in case of a birth, it's just about the birth certificate. Make sure on the birth certificate, the date and the parent's name is done properly. In case of a death, please make sure that the death certificate is in place, and also look for a will or anything that that person has left behind. And like we mentioned earlier, we advise that any individual or any individual who's listening to this call, please go ahead and get a will done, because it's only going to come into act after you're gone, and it will not put anybody in trouble once you're gone. It's not like they have to go through all the trouble because a will was not written back. And in fact, the main reason that this entire call was done was because somebody had that problem, and that's how the entire topic got generated. Sushant, do you have anything more to share on this?
Yeah. Sorry, there was some
No,
slight,
we're good now.
yeah, okay. So there may be a slight overlap because I think I missed first part of Abhilesh's answer. So
No
apologies
problem,
for any
Sushant.
overlap. So like I think it's already been mentioned. The name. One more thing I would like to add on to that is ensure it's name is uniform across all your documents and records. What I notice is some people have X as their name on their birth certificate. It's XY on their Aadhaar card, on their school living certificate. While in the bank, it's a altogether different name. It may be Z.
Yeah.
So that you must ensure, because the bank recognizes you by what is the name on your bank account opening form or your bank passbook. So even for clearing checks in your name, which come in your name, if they do not match with the name the bank has, then it's not going to be cleared. And this is more of a problem when after your lifetime, when your will has to be executed. If the name does not match, they'll be like, I'm sorry, I don't know this person because the account holder here is X, but your will says XY. So please ensure that there's uniformity of your name across the board, all documents, all records, wherever you have to give your name, give the same name. That's very important. Right from birth till your death. So that's very important. So that is one thing which covers the entire lifespan, the uniformity in your name and documents. I mean, in all your documents.
And just to interrupt, Sushant, like let's say a girl got her name changed after the wedding. So then how does this go about, Sushant? And how does this name get changed? I'm just interrupting with another question also here.
So changing of name after marriage or for any other reason, we'll have to apply to that concerned authority saying that the name has changed. There may be a name change form. Another thing which people do is we make an affidavit of the person. Affidavit is basically a statement made by you on oath, saying that saying whatever you have to say, and it's attested by notary, and then you carry out a paper publication saying that I've changed my name from AB to CD or whatever. So that is a route people follow. Another more strenuous route that is usually followed is a civil suit that we file in the civil court for declaration. So you can declare that this is my name. That can so where you provide sufficient records to, and this is a very this is only in extreme scenarios it may be required, but this is also a route that is there where you have to go to get an order from the court saying this is my name and not not anything else, with
Anything
sufficient
else?
proof. So that's why it's essential that, so even for name change, even for example, changing a name on the passport, there are various forms and
Correct.
annexure E, annexure F, all those things are there. So each document will have its own requirement for how you need to go about changing a name.
Got it.
So that is one thing. Another thing I would like to touch upon is, people usually believe are under the what would I say, a misconception that nominee amounts to successor. So, for example, you give a nominee for all your investments, policies, accounts, a demat account, whatever it is. People give a nominee. So please understand that a nominee can be anybody. A nominee is not your natural successor or legal heir. So if he is just the person to whom the bank or the company, or whoever is the person holding your money, can transfer your money to and end its responsibility over that after your death. This is
Got
so.
it.
If I am the nominee for a person X, and I'm not related to him at all by blood or marriage, and let's say he appoints me because I'm his lawyer, for example. So if X has appointed me as nominee for his accounts, one of his accounts, and he then dies, does not mean that I get X's money and I can enjoy it. No, the money that belongs to X is to be held in trust by me. I hold it in
Yes.
trust for the benefit of the legal heirs. So it may, if there is a will, then I hold it for the benefit in trust for the benefit of whoever is succeeding to it under the will. If there is no will, then under the general rules of succession, under the various laws applicable depending on the person's religion
Got
and
it.
gender. So
Got it,
depending,
Sushant.
so that is the important difference. But then what is the point of having a nominee, people may ask. It just makes the processing formalities easier for the persons you have left behind in getting hold of your assets, which you have been creating over your lifetime for their benefit. So
Correct.
it makes it that much simpler for them to get their access to it, because banks or whoever, banks or insurance companies or companies in which you have shares, deal with okay, as soon as they see you're the nominee, you fill in the form and other formalities, the money is transferred to the nominee, and that's the end of it. So now it's with the nominee. Then you have to approach them saying, now let's say the children of X can approach me saying that, look, now you got the money, you should give
Transfer
it to
it
me.
to
Then I
me.
transfer it to them. So that is the
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
So the simplest way then to go about it is, just you can just make your natural heir the nominee. So he is the
Nominee.
successor beneficiary as well as the trustee. So there is no conflict in such a
On that.
situation. So that
Got
is
it.
the key. What do you say? An aspect which many people are under a
Yes.
misconception that I have a nominee, so I'm sorted.
Yes.
So you
Got
are
it.
sorted to a certain extent. That's it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in depth, I think Abhilash has covered will, so I'll not get into that again. We have
Yeah.
also covered it last time. Will is also makes things smoother for the people you leave behind to deal with your assets.
Yeah.
I think
So,
I'll.
guys, please make sure that you fill up the nominee. Don't think that that's not a mandatory field, so let me not touch it. It's important that you fill it up so that it helps and it takes care of your family later. And like what Sushant mentioned, probably leave it off in the name of your legal hire, so it's taken care of. In case of a birth, like we mentioned earlier, take care of the date of birth and the names properly in the proper order. If there is a change of name due to marriage or whatever is the reason, please make sure it's legally done with a newspaper notification, and through a notary it should be taken care of. And do write a will, and once the will has been written, post a death of that person, of anybody. So the death certificate has to be taken, and whatever will has been left back, that also will be taken into action by whoever has been given the in charge for it. Is that right, Abhilesh?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. So, moving on to the next question. For the rest of you people who are joining, thank you so much. Mahesh and Srinath here mentioned that today's conversation is very, very interesting, and they're appreciating both of your inputs. Thank you so much for that. The rest of you people, please go ahead and put in your comments, or if you have any questions, please put it up here. I'm going to be taking all those questions in 2 or 3 more minutes, because I have 2 more questions to ask these gentlemen, and then they're all yours. I'm going to take all your questions and ask them. So the next one that I wanted to ask you people is, specifically, we as Indian citizens, right? We think that this is a general perception, okay? Do you think people are generally skeptical? I want to know from your perspective. So do you think people are generally skeptical in approaching courts due to perception that there is a delay in disposal of cases? Because the main reason I think a lot of us do not even want to take up anything related to law is we think, okay, it's going to take its own sweet time and it'll not happen probably even when I'm alive. So why do I even touch it? So is that true, or what is your take on it? I want to know from both of you.
Right. I'll go first, Sushan. So yeah, it's I would definitely not like having practiced in courts for the last 8 years. I would definitely not accept to it. So the general perception might be there. Yes, I do acknowledge the fact that yes, there is a large perception that would always say, no, it's like taking forever for a case to get adjudicated before a court of law. Okay, so one person needs to remember the fact that there is a set procedure that is established by law, and any person who is approaching the court. So I'll just give you a very crude example. Okay, so all three of us are here as of now. Okay, so there is some dispute between me and Sushant. Then I make Kripalini as a judge here. So I'll come to Kripalini. I'll say, okay, fine. I'll have my own set of like allegations to make against Sushant. Sushant will come to you. He'll have his own set of allegations to make. Now, how would you come to a conclusion? So that's something that like you need to analyze. Okay, so we cannot abruptly come to any decision. In fact, frankly speaking, from an advocate who has like 8 years of experience, I would say
and
most
a youngster
of the
also.
yes, of course.
Yeah.
So one thing that we generally like lose sight of is the fact that what documentation we have and what are the supporting documents we give to substantiate our allegations. Okay, so that is very crucial, because what happens is a layman has very minimal knowledge with respect to law. So whenever he approaches a court of law, he might not have anything in proper or like organized manner. So it is the lawyer who actually takes the initiative. He collates everything in an order and then we present it before the court. So one general hurdle that I have personally faced, and I am quite sure every other lawyer would have faced this, is clients once for the first time when they come up to the office, they'll give you one set of facts. Then after like a couple of conversations with them, after like a month or a couple of months, once litigation is initiated, they come up with another fresh set of facts or like some additional information. So those are things like which actually tend to delay things before the court. So otherwise like in fact I would want to point out to general public that there are classifications, because like as of now we have separate commercial courts that are being set up to like adjudicate only commercial disputes. So and to ensure that like it is done at a very expedient manner. And likewise we have again civil courts which would take up only civil disputes. We have set up magistrate courts which exclusively handle like criminal cases there. And again like we have further classification. So for example, motor vehicle accident, which we earlier discussed, so we have a separate tribunal for that. And we also have some very unique concept where like we call it a summary suit. So whenever there is any dispute with respect to monetary aspect and the debt is admitted, we generally initiate a summary suit. So the procedure there is like considerably relaxed when it comes to like a regular proceeding that civil court like generally go through. So to expedite every other possible thing has been initiated, and in fact like it is working as well. The average like considering, see, previously it always used to be like a lot of adjournments were also being taken at the instance of advocates, like let's be frank as well. So but again there is a set procedure. End of the day, like everything would boil down to this: there is a set procedure, and whenever you step into a court, things cannot be done arbitrarily. Okay, it has to follow the set procedure. Everything has to be appreciated as per the eyes of law. And merely because of that, I think maybe there might be a slight delay, but again we always ensure that there's no prejudice that would be done to any person who is like a litigant.
And it becomes a fair chance for both the parties instead of just jumping into a conclusion. Got it. Sushant, your views on it. Do you agree to what Abhilesh is saying, or do you have a different perception like the general crowd mentality on this?
No, I agree. See, the one thing people need to understand is the sheer population of India. So just by that one statistic, we really cannot, compare the timelines or the taken to dispose cases in India as maybe to other Western jurisdictions, because the the sheer population by itself, I think, drains the judiciary
Yes.
and overburdens, of course, because, and so that shows one that so this is sort of conflicting. People on one hand
Yeah.
say it's delayed, but on the other hand, the filing of cases do not stop. So that
Yes.
shows people have faith in the judiciary, though they may
Yeah.
say it's getting delayed or
Yeah.
any such things. But that means people have faith in the judiciary, in our justice system,
Yeah.
and they believe that their rights can be protected or enforced by approaching the courts of law, which is good. That
Yeah.
shows that we are a civilized society abiding by the law
Yes.
and constitution and all that.
Right.
So that is one thing people need to keep in mind: the population and the ratio of the judges who are there to adjudicate the cases to the population. Like, say, per million of population, how many judges do we have? So,
Yeah.
and like, so these are things people need to understand. So,
Yeah.
and now see, judiciary has taken a lot of action towards helping facilitating the speedy disposal of cases. And see, things do take time to implement. We need to understand and appreciate. See, after all, the judges are also human. They're as human
Correct.
as all of us. The ones who
Yeah.
argue before them, the ones who blame them, the ones who file cases before them, they're all
Yeah.
as human as all of us. So they also
Yeah.
have their own human limitations. So we have to understand that, appreciate
Yeah.
that. And see, even adjournments, yes, they're taken, but there are so many reasons, valid reasons for why adjournments are taken. Sometimes, for example, let's say a person has to come to record his evidence. I'm going a little touching,
Yes.
just to so that the maybe dispel the perception, dispel this misconception
Sure, Sushant.
from an insider's point of view. So I would like to just elaborate, because these are things people do not appreciate because they don't know. They're from the outside.
Correct.
That's how it looks to them. So that's why I'm just touching upon this a little. So
Sure.
let's say there's a recording of evidence that someone has to
Hmm.
go to, but then this daughter's marriage is fixed.
Hmm.
So do you want the court to say, no, as per the law, I cannot give you more adjournments. You come here. I
Yeah.
don't care about your daughter's marriage. Or the court
No.
should take a relaxed humanitarian view, saying, okay, it's
Yes.
your daughter's marriage or your cousin's marriage. Sometimes the
Correct.
advocate may have his daughter's marriage.
Yes.
There was a case where long adjournment was taken, where someone's son was almost fatally injured, so he had to
Got it.
be by his son's bedside, the advocate. So
Hmm.
that led to considerable delay in the case. If you look at it statistically, it's a delay, but what's the reason?
Correct.
There's a human angle to
Yeah.
all of this. So that is the thing. And like Abhilesh rightly pointed out, there is a procedure established by law which has to be followed.
Yeah.
It's better that uh, it's rather than convicting one innocent person, it's better that 100 accused are let scot free,
Right.
because that is
And I remember you also stating a comparison between the US Supreme Court number of cases and
yeah,
Indian
that,
Supreme Court.
yes, that
Yeah.
also. See, this again, I cannot would be an unverifiable fact. So again, going against my own
Yeah.
statements previously, let's say so your Supreme Court has maybe a few hundred or a few hundred cases that are filed in a year, while
Hmm.
in a day we may be having a few hundred cases that are filed in our Supreme Court here.
Correct. That
And there are,
itself
that
shows.
itself
Yeah.
shows the burden on even the Supreme Court. As you go up the
Right.
ladder, as up the pyramid, so you have various district courts. In a district, you have maybe like Bangalore, we have about 70, 80 judges for the Bangalore urban district
Hmm.
who are dealing
Hmm.
with cases. One high
Hmm.
court for the entire state of Karnataka. You take this into perspective,
Yeah.
with the two additional benches, of course, like in that
Yeah.
Dharwad, Kalburgi, but one Supreme Court for the entire country. So
Right.
up the ladder, further up the ladder you go. You take this into perspective. The people need to
Got
take
it.
this into perspective, and we need to do our best as lawyers, as clients, as general public in supporting the judiciary, because that is one resort for us to save ourselves, to protect ourselves from any government
Yes.
action or any private action. Also, in the lockdown, you would have noticed there were a lot
Yeah.
of things that the Supreme Court and various high courts were doing
Hmm.
to monitor the situation and take care of
Yes.
various aspects. And then again, people may ask, on certain situations they take action, certain situations they're silent. Why is that? because I'm just touching upon this. I'm sorry. I may be
No, please
diving a
go ahead,
little deep
Sushant. Yeah.
diving a little deep into this topic, but again we need to dispel this notion that courts are silent sometimes, or selectively silent, selectively they take action. No, it is not any vested interests or anything that is at play. Please understand, the courts are also, just because they're a judge, they're not above the law. They also have to function within the limits of the law and constitutional limitations. There's something called a separation of powers. So judiciary cannot transgress into what the government can do or what the parliament can do, just like the parliament and the government cannot transgress into what the courts can do. So they have to function within these constitutional limitations. The constitution is supreme. So keeping all these limitations in mind and so many other factors that come into play, the courts take a stand on various issues. It nothing to do with any vested interests at play, or carelessness or anything of that sort. Let's
Nothing.
not we should not attribute any
Yeah.
such wrong notions to our.
And like you just mentioned, the sheer number itself
The
is so
sheer
much,
number,
right?
that by
Sushant,
itself, I mean, I think with that one sentence I should have actually completed my answer. The sheer population itself, destroys all other statistics which may be there to destroys all the statistics that people may throw at us from other jurisdictions.
Got it. Yeah.
So,
Thank you, Sushant.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for those insights. And I think just the previous session and this session, both of you have given us so much insights. And I'm sure there's so much that all of us have taken back based on whichever aspects that you shared on. My last question to you, both of you, is if you had to give 5 tips off your head immediately right now, saying, even if you forgot everything else, these are 5 things that you have to mandatorily do. And if you had to give that advice to everybody who is listening, what is your final advice to everyone? Abhilesh, would you want to go first?
Sure.
Top 5 things.
5 things, maybe like not specifically 5 things. I'll tell like
go
as
ahead,
much
Abhilesh.
as I get.
Yeah.
Okay, so just like try to be aware of what laws. I'm like generally like once you pick up the habit of reading newspapers, I'm quite sure like at least 30 to 40% of like legal knowledge is like rather imparted amongst general public. So just be aware of what are the laws that generally come into force. Just ensure that you're a law-abiding citizen. Ensure that you're not commit any offense intentionally. There's no breach. So whenever before you decide to step into a court of law, always like, any transaction that you would want to have, let it be whatever irrespective of the nature of the transaction, always try to and ensure as far as possible, wherever practically it is possible, just to ensure it is in writing, because that's where it ensures that one could have immediate recourse to law. Okay.
Yes.
So yes, be a beautiful citizen, I would say.
Yeah. So don't be ignorant of law. I think that's what Abhilesh is trying to say. As per the topic, we can't give excuses just saying I was not aware. We should be aware of at least the basic things, at least things that they have shared over the session. And everything, keep it in writing. The more you keep it in writing, the more it becomes beneficial for any party, for making sure that you come to a final conclusion as early as possible. Is that right, Abhilesh? Thank you so much. Yeah. Sushant, over to you. What are your top points that you can think of, Sushant?
Yeah. So one thing is we need to understand, just as we have a right, there is also a corresponding duty to every right. So people should maybe be aware of what are the fundamental rights and the restrictions on these rights that are there in the constitution. There's also something called as fundamental duties, which are also listed in the constitution, which we need to read and understand. Some basic things like respect for the national flag, respect for the national anthem, preservation of your environment. These are some duties. Some of the rights, like one of which Abhilesh elaborated upon, freedom to speak, the freedom to practice any trade, occupation, or business is another freedom. Freedom to practice the religion of your choice. So there are various rights, and there are restrictions imposed on all these rights. So that is one thing people need to keep in mind. Just because you have a right, it is not unfettered, because that would mean you're infringing upon the rights of somebody else. So each right has a corresponding duty also. And do not go beyond reasonable limits. So that may be broadly the first point. Second point is, for in law there is something called as the concept of limitation. That is basically, for any legal action you need to take, there is a time prescribed in law.
Yes.
So you have to take action for protecting your right or enforcing your right within the time prescribed by law. So don't sleep over something. As soon as possible, please approach. I mean, you can either approach a lawyer or you can do it on your own. It's up to you. Nothing stops you in law from conducting your own case. So you the only advice is read up and ensure that you are there for taking remedial action within the time prescribed by law. Thumb rule is usually nothing is prescribed. It's usually 3 years, but that depends on the various
different types
of rights that are infringed. So that's the second point. Third point would be, please follow the law. I mean, there's a law in place, and just because you feel it's not right does not mean you have the right to not follow the law. Even the courts, even when you challenge a law, the presumption is that the law is constitutionally valid, and we have to show the court as to why the law is incorrect or it violates some rights. So, that is on a very legal. Please follow the law. Let's not have the attitude of, let's see how I can find some loophole to not follow this law.
Right.
I think a very common example would be a few years back, the BWSSB, that's the Bangalore Water Supply Board, had made it mandatory for houses and other structures, buildings above a certain dimension to make rainwater harvesting systems in place.
Correct.
I mean, okay, personally, I have it in place, so I have the moral authority to ask how many people have actually complied with it. The saying it's too. I mean, there may be various reasons. It's too costly, or I'm just not interested. How does it matter? The idea behind that is to recharge the groundwater table. So if you are not doing that, is a small part. You are not doing it yourself. Then we really cannot be heard complaining, saying, "Look, the groundwater is reducing, the trees are falling, pollution is increasing, etc." So that's the thing we need to keep in mind. Follow the law. Don't think of ways to overcome the law or circumvent the law. Not overcome, sorry, that will be wrong. To circumvent the law. Then that would be 3. 4, like I previously mentioned, and Abhilesh also previously mentioned, please ensure uniformity. You maintain all your documents and maintain uniformity in all your documents, whether it's your name, place of birth, date of birth, whatever other details. And as he rightly pointed out, document as much as you can. Fourthly, please ensure that whatever you say is can be backed up by proof or substantiated. There are certain things which your oral statement may be the only thing, but otherwise please ensure that what you're saying is a verifiable fact which can be substantiated or justified, and we should not say something just for the sake of saying it or just because I feel it's right or emotionally this. And lastly, for everything there is a process. It's called a due process, procedure established by law, various names. It's called by various names that has to be followed by us as citizens of India, as well as by the courts of law, which is why there may be the perception, I mean, linking it to the previous question, so that may be the perception of that, but that has to be followed and complied to ensure that there is fairness and there is a sense of justice, that it has been done in a fair and impartial manner. So that has to be ensured. So these are some of the things that people need to keep in mind generally when we are conducting ourselves.
Got it.
I think
Thank
that
you,
would cover
Sushant.
it. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Sushant. And I do see a lot of questions which has come in, but most of it I think we've already answered. So I will not.
I'm so sorry. There's one thing I wanted to add.
Yes, Sushant.
Maybe point number 6. I lost count.
Yes, please.
As we both have been stressing upon in the previous and this session as well, there is no difference between a physical and a digital platform in terms of your rights and duties. So whatever rights and duties you have on a physical platform are also applicable on a virtual or a digital platform. So we need to conduct ourselves accordingly.
Perfect. Thank you, Sushant. Thank you for that. And thank you so much for all the questions that you've put in here. And most of these questions were already covered in this session or the previous session. So I'm not going to be repeating those questions in the interest of time. Krishnanand, thank you so much for that comment. I have made a note of it, and I will take care of whatever that you mentioned in terms of the app. If I can change it, I will for sure try. I, in fact, tried the ones that you mentioned already, the conferencing apps. But due to technical issues that I had, I was not able to do it. And coming to my last question to both of you is, how was it being a part of Project Nyan's discussion in the previous session and this time? What is your feedback that both of you have?
After you, Sushant.
Okay. Okay. I think it was a wonderful experience, very insightful and informative for me personally, and hopefully for the audience who have tuned in previously and today, because I also just had to brush up so that I'm able to give at least reasonably correct answers and guide general give general guidelines and general information. So this is, I
Yes.
think, a great initiative by you, Krupalini, to form a digital or an e-library, which is a
Yeah.
repository of information on so many topics,
Yes.
which are as varied as sustainable living, mental health, law. I mean, so anybody wants to access something from the comfort of your home, your office, or even
Yes.
whiling away time at the airport. Maybe not in
Yeah.
the near future, but yeah, uh, whenever you're
Yeah.
whiling away time at the airport, you can just log into your various Facebook platform or YouTube platform, and
Yeah.
whatever knowledge you want to pick up, it's there, and this is free for all. So it's something,
Yes.
a great initiative. I'm sure, and I have to personally appreciate the time and effort you take in
Thank you, Sushant.
keeping this going every Tuesday. I don't know how you do it. It's great
Thank
because
you,
we are all
Sushant.
caught up in our personal and professional lives and
Yeah.
commitments. I don't see myself doing this on a regular basis. Once in a while, yeah, maybe to help, but uh,
Yeah.
on a regular weekly basis, answer definitely no. So great. I mean, please keep it up. I look
Yeah.
forward
Thank you,
to
Sushant.
uh, maybe not tuning in live may be difficult for us. I
Yes.
mean, unless we are the guest speakers. So
Yes.
on a Tuesday evening, but we'll definitely look forward to viewing a recorded sessions on YouTube or Facebook. Please
Yes.
continue with this. Cover as many areas as you can,
Yeah.
because as a lawyer, one thing we learn is you never stop learning.
Right. Thank you,
So
Sushant. Thank you for
thank you
those
so much.
nice words. Abhilesh, what is your final words? What is your feedback, Abhilesh?
Yes, Krupal. I have to know, like, first and foremost, you are like amazing. You have taken a great initiative of like
Thank you.
compiling all these different topics and then like making having a questionnaire, and also you take questions directly from the audience as well. That is really like ensures that any person who is viewing without
Mm.
like their identity, they could also post questions. And
Yeah.
the diverse topics that you actually cover is amazing. And again, as the page name of the page would also go, Project Nan. That's like
Yeah.
really touching, like it's
Yeah.
knowledge. So there is,
Yeah.
it's like oceans, and your
Yeah.
initiative to collect things and put it in one place, which would be used as a repository, is amazing. And I deeply appreciate the fact that you take so much time and you put so much
Thank
of
you.
dedication of yours. You do a lot of homework. Again, so for all the viewers, like it might just be like a one and a half an hour session, live session. But the homework that you actually do behind this one and a half an hour of like a telecast, like unbelievable, and you are like really kind at heart. So I would definitely wish you all the best, like going
Thank
forward.
you.
It has been like a personal, very good experience for me personally as well. In fact, I
Yes.
also had to, like as Sushant also pointed out, you also had to, like brush up on our legal knowledge.
Thank you, Abhilesh. In fact, the main reason that I set this up as a platform was, there's so much learning that all of us really have as humans, and there is no way that I can experience everything. So, if there is somebody who's already experienced it and learned it, I just want this to be a platform where, somebody's already holding a beam of light, who's walked that path, who can guide somebody who's looking for directions. And yes, I do topics from ranging from attitude to skills to knowledge, and we've picked up various different topics, and all the guests have been very kind to come and do it, finding time and doing this. And just in the last 3 hours that both of you have given time, the last 1.5 hour and this 1.5 hour, I've learned a lot. And I'm sure the audience have also learned a lot. There's so much appreciation which is also flowing in, so many people talking about it. Thank you so much for doing this. And my one last request to all of you who are listening today is, next week I'm looking for guests to come in from the nursing fraternity. So I'm trying to bring in guests who can come and talk about how does it feel to be a nurse. And if you know of somebody who is a nurse, please do put me in touch, because I'm looking forward to having more guests to join in. And The reason I want nurses to come in is we always think the medical fraternity is about doctors, but there are a lot of people who are giving in their time and effort and putting in a lot of human emotion there to get that person cured. It's not just the medicines, I think, which does the magic, but I think it's also the human touch. So I want to capture stories from the nurses side and learn from them, and probably pick up some tips on the next week in a Tune In Tuesday. So if any of the nurses are listening, or you know of any nurse, please do put me in touch. I'll be more than happy to have you on board. So until we meet next time, see you from both of us. I mean, from all three of us, sorry. And thank you so much once again, Sushant and Abhilesh. It was wonderful having your time. And for me personally, one thing that I know is the most precious and priceless thing is time. And you guys have given me enough of it, which you can never take back from whatever that you've gifted to Project Nyan. Thank you from deepest of my heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you for giving us this platform. Wonderful opportunity for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So until we meet next time, bye guys. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.